is ideally already having an AI innovation team coming out, which reports to the entire C-suite, where if you are having a marketing use case, you have the CMO involved, but this AI innovation leader has a certain amount of budget. They're playing around with these tools. Because once you play around with these tools, it also starts becoming clear whether you want to do something in-house or not. How does Crunch today work with companies? Every business has a very custom requirement. They need to know what is the most painful thing for them to work. And we usually always recommend that if we can identify the 2 things or 3 things that are really hot for them, that are a matter of concern where they can work with us, that sets up the cadence. But broadly, any engagement would involve us first of all, identifying those use cases, and then in general, getting a sense of where even is the data being stored. So it may be a warehouse, they may be using a data lake, all of these solutions that come in the form of whole data stack. They may be using an ETL or a data transformation tool, which is bringing the data from the warehouse into these different systems. We need to know, oh, so you are a SaaS company. Are you using Salesforce? Are you using HubSpot? Where is that data going? What are the common identifiers? Basically get a pulse on everything that they have. Once that pulse is there, what we can by default do is build what we call as a semantic layer or a metric layer. So this semantic layer is more like, how do you map the raw data to the business term? Now, the raw data usually would have weird things, like it would have first name dot something, like it has a very technical language, and it has location, but maybe it's in a CSV file somewhere. It has the timestamp, but you don't care about the hours and the minutes and the second, you only care about the date. It has an order value, and these could be like maybe a relevant, like everything I'm saying is maybe a relevant example for a retail or an e-commerce company. Now, when you're trying to make a semantic layer, we would basically marry multiple tables and go on and say, oh, so when I'm calculating the lifetime value of a customer, which is how much is Vikram worth to a brand if Vikram becomes a customer, I would have to marry these 2-3 tables, run a set of mathematical calculations on them, and then come to the answer. So that whole mapping of, okay, lifetime value for Vikram is equal to this plus this minus this into this divided by this. All of that logic is baked in. And then you do that for all the business terms, major business terms. The idea is to not bombard the AI with tables that look similar, because if you have 3-4 kinds of tables, maybe there is a date column in 2 of those tables. And anything when you're trying to do with like, how long has it been since the customer did XYZ, and you leave it to the AI is going to just get confused because it has no way of knowing which date column you are referring to, because maybe both the columns are tied start date or end date or something like that. So what we are trying to do with the semantic layer is build this whole understanding of what the data is and what these business terms are for the AI. Once you feed that semantic layer in, by now in parallel, we also work very closely, mostly in the form of services offering or mostly in the form of a consulting offering, where we work with the company stakeholders. We do not charge anything for it, but we just work with the company stakeholders to understand, given the status quo, given how the team is structured, given the resources, given certain timelines, maybe people want to achieve an outcome or they want to automate analytics on a certain front by a certain date, what all would be needed. And then we just pick like a couple of use cases, identify a couple of folks from their side who could work with us. And this work with us is mostly where we hand over a system to them. This is our AI where the semantic layer has been built in. We know that, okay, they can now work on top of it. They can ask questions with it, and they just keep giving us feedback. So it's still that stage where there is some sort of a customization. This is where we go on and say, oh, I know. So your leader needs this not in the form of a Q&A. They need this in the form of a PDF. Oh, so you are saying that you need this available within Microsoft Teams or within Slack, where you can just ask this question. Or you need this to be an automated insight. What are those parameters? This is where we spend a lot of our time and energy. But all in all, from start to end, a project would be wrapped up in as less as a week. And in very complex use cases, as we're working with like certain enterprise clients, the requirements themselves are so widespread, getting access to the data, reviewing security policies and so on. Sometimes it can also spill over to a couple of quarters. That is how this whole thing works. But what ends up happening is you would now be thinking, how does this actually change the course of what the data plus AI future looks like for the company. And what ends up happening is once you have the semantic layer set up, you have a lot of power in your hand. So now your AI understands your data and you can actually just challenge it to do newer things. So that is what we do a lot as well. We ask the AI to start doing new things. So once the use case that was identified has been met, jumping from there to new use cases, or let's say modifying something in the semantic layer, it all becomes really easy, which in traditional world is very tough. If you have to, let's say, change the definition, you go on and say, hey, for us, the metric that we are really gonna look at now is not the number of users who have signed up, but the number of users who made the purchase within 3 days of signing up. If that is the metric you're looking at, you have to train people. Like that news or that change takes time before it propagates into the hands of everyone who's making a report. With the semantic layer, you change one column, people don't even have to know what has changed. Like they keep plotting the North Star metric, but the AI knows that the North Star metric definition itself has changed. So it just prepares you for that new age, because now with this, you could power all automations. Like we have these APIs that could trigger different systems. So you don't even have to worry about, oh, so the AI identified this. Could it also alert someone else? Yes, it could. The AI also identified this. Could it create a dummy order for me to review? Yes, it could. It could do a lot of things. So the benefit of this is that you're actually like, this is the first step towards being transformed into an AI first world. And then all of these capabilities around, could we plug in multiple data sources? What could we do with this? Could we export it into some other place? All the technical capabilities that are involved, that, hey, we have some data lying around here. This is too sensitive of a nature. Or for that matter, we don't trust the servers of these large language models. So could you not send our data out there? These all come in the form of customizations. And we have worked with folks who have even on-prem deployments. On-prem is equivalent to on-premise. So it's like that the data is never actually, you're not using the cloud offering. You are using it locally on your local servers, on your local computers, and it's not being shared with anyone to the extent. So we've done on-prem deployments. We've also done like completely cloud-based automations, and it works well. That is the whole process of how Crunch starts working. So how could a CEO future-proof the company? Because there's a lot that needs to be done than just implementing a software. And to that, I always say you could be on the sideline and watch things change, which is what a lot of executives honestly are choosing to do. And it's for the same reason that choosing to be on the sideline barely affects your revenue as much today. But the thing is that AI truly changes what for your business can only be understood once you have deployed it internally. We have seen companies where it looked like, oh, so I'm going to have an AI offering where I can just ask a question and get an answer and all is going to be well. But when you start doing that, you realize how broken the infra is, and you have to fix the root cause of the problem, because if you don't fix it, you're never going to be ready for AI. And if you're never going to be ready for AI, it's not a matter of whether you would do it or not. It's a matter of when you would do it or not. And today you still have that luxury, and any visionary or any visionary executive for that matter, who doesn't want to make a decision last minute because they're pressurized for it, is ideally already having an AI innovation team coming out, which reports to the entire C-suite, where if you are having a marketing use case, you have the CMO involved, but this AI innovation leader has a certain amount of budget. They're playing around with these tools, because once you play around with these tools, it also starts becoming clear whether you want to do something in-house or not. And that's not a bad thing. I have seen people look at our solution and go on and say, Vikram, we only do 20% of what you are saying because the rest 80% is so core to our business that we want to build it in-house. I'm like, sure, go for it. I'm more than happy to see how that evolves. But being on the sideline actually doesn't tell you anything, because it's like being on Instagram and seeing people talk about how cool OpenAI is and how cool ChatGPT is. And when you go and actually type something in ChatGPT, you realize it's not working because you were just really bad at prompting. And then the amount of shift that will come overnight when the world is ready. And when I say overnight, I actually mean it, because when your competitor starts laying off their team or starts automating stuff or starts restructuring things so that they can save more and they can have a fully automated, let's say, sales team or business development team, it's insane. It's okay as long as it's not done and then suddenly they are spending 50% less than you in a certain function in the company and they're getting twice as much of output. In fact, today, to a large extent, I have been playing internally with systems where my own lead generation is also being automated as far as possible, which is not like AI talking to you. I'm still involved in the loop, but I'm trying to review as many things as I can, then write everything from scratch. So the AI comes back with some recommendations. I go make some tweaks. I'm like, okay, do it. As you do that, you also realize that in 3 months, 4 months, my system would have learned all of the nitty-gritties of what I'm really trying to do. So if you were thinking of adopting AI by the end of 2025, trust me, you're gonna need more than like 12 to 18 months. Just get to that stage where AI understands what you're trying to do. You have a data set that is more compatible with it. You just have a system that like works like magic. So that is probably the only way. I would say hire an AI innovation expert. On the data front, it could also be one of your data leads, but give them exclusive access to it. You would probably have to burn your fingers. There are tons of companies that just have bad execution on their end. And on the outside, it's very tough to say who is a good one or who is a bad one. So maybe you end up betting on the wrong horse. So in that case, we've also worked with folks who are not giving access to their original data. Like they're working on a very specific use case on a dummy data set. And when they're really convinced, they like start expanding. And more than often, I don't think any AI company today, which is providing a solution, would be able to just give a out-of-the-box solution which can be deployed. Like you plug it in and it's working fine. There is a service angle to it which is needed because everyone has architected their whole stack very differently. You have then certain designations themselves are not same. So designations are not same, websites are not same, UI is not same, and you need to actually just ensure that you are getting ready for it, because in 2025 and the narrative is going to be very different. It's going to be, oh my God, we are in a panicky situation. And then at that point of time, there's going to be a couple of vendors who would have been established and they're going to charge you maybe 10x more to empower the same stuff. But hey, it's my personal viewpoint. So let's break down the number of steps that you would ideally have to take if you were a CEO trying to future-proof your business by 2025 end. Because what we just talked about, they're very subjective in nature and there's a ton of things in there. So that it doesn't get lost, as a recap, I would say the first thing you would have to do is identify one champion in your company who is going to lead the AI charter. That person ideally should be reporting to you, should have access to all the other C-suites. Don't have a lot of hierarchy in there right now just because you're a big company, because it's probably going to slow things down and everyone has their own ways of interacting. So it's best if you keep that person as close as possible to you. When it matures, sure, add all the levels of hierarchies that you need to. The second thing is actually identifying that one department where you want to see the shift happen first. It's best if it's your biggest bottleneck as well today, but don't pick something which you have not been able to crack. So let's say you've never been able to crack the inventory management, even with human beings handling everything. Getting AI to do that is hoping magic to change everything for you. But if you are seeing like there's a particular function or a vertical, for example, your sales team has been doing good and you just want to make them like 10x more efficient. Usually those orgs where you go on and say, oh man, if I could hire 100 more people, I would immediately hire them because I know this is the team that's really driving things for me. Pick one function like that for yourself and get that champion to be really well versed with that function. The third point would be ideally hiring a couple of first folks internally. And when I say hiring these AI first folks, you may have had your AI forever, but the generative AI capabilities that exist today, or people who have worked with LLMs, people who have built things, these could be founders as well. They don't have to be super experienced folks, but these are operators who have their hands dirty, who know the nuances of what you are really dealing with when you're dealing with a vendor. It's very important. Whether you choose to work with a vendor, they're going to help you with evaluation, or if you choose to not work with a vendor, build it in-house, they're going to be like the leaders on that track. The fourth thing is you'd need a budget. You can't just expect, oh, so we are trying to save costs by deploying AI, so let's not give any budget. And that's also because maybe for the first 5 tools you try, 3 of them are like completely rubbish. And you realize that, okay, we ended up wasting a bunch of money. But the thing is, it just is very expensive. As a vendor who provides something on AI, if you do not have a budget today, I'm not actually going to sit with you and figure out what it is that you need to do internally to be able to solve the problem. But if you have budget, right now, it matters more to me that you are successful using what I have built than you care, like about whether I succeed for you or not. And that just means that if you have that budget, it actually opens up lines of communications and conversations. In here, I think a lot of people have biases on, oh, I only want to work with established people, or I only want to work with smaller vendors. I would say have your hands in both the pots. Working with established vendor, of course, has its own pros and cons, but the pace of change, or maybe that uptick that you're looking for in a shorter period of time, might actually just happen by working with someone who is a smaller company, because you would be like the sole focus for that vendor at that point of time. And in general, when you do this, you could have an internal team as well explore possibilities hand in hand, and you'll see that you are in general as an org getting a lot of clarity on those things. And the fifth is a mindset change. You have to be ready for cultural change. You are going to have to restructure the org massively. And it's not an option of, again, whether you want to do it or not. It just is, hopefully you don't have to be forced to do it. You make the move beforehand, you train people, because if we come in today, we don't go in and say that data analysts will run out of job. No. In fact, I strongly believe as we bring an AI first workflow for data analysis, more and more data analysts would see themselves moving towards being a business leader, or they would see their role being much more significant to the company, or maybe they just start spending time on stuff that they actually love. No person out there is probably right now at the risk of replacing them, because for everything that AI is going to do, there are more opportunities popping up, and people see this. I spend time with data folks, and there are tons of them who want to learn what that AI first future is going to be, what are the skills that they need to ensure they have in their pool, so that they're no longer just a person who like scrambles through data and gets you certain graphs, or they're no longer that person who is not within the meeting room when something strategic is being discussed. Like, they can actually come and help the AI get to where it is. Because if we are the ones who are deploying AI, you can be rest assured that you will still always be in command. That world is very far, and it would be naive of any executive to hope that everything is going to get automated. But that mind shift change would probably actually be about or restructuring, or be about upskilling the people in a very different way. And you'd have to do it dynamically, because when you start working with AI, on one day you will see that, oh, this is working, and on day 3 you would run into some hiccups. But as an early adopter, that is probably something you have to be comfortable with, and early adoption would probably have massive shift. When I say the cultural change, that sort of encompasses everything around, do you see your company running like more automations in the future? Do you see your company not like meeting that often in person in future? All of it is actually a part of the bigger umbrella. If any of this is confusing, we understand it. Just click on the link below. It will take you to our website. You'll be able to browse through all of our use cases, case studies, go through the demos, and hopefully that will clarify things for you.